Topic 2, as always on Trove Talk. Tell me about your favorite game, Frank, or at least your favorite game that we're calling your favorite game for the purposes of this episode.
So basically, how I was talking about with Persona 4 Golden and how like when it came to mind, so that must be like that should be number one. Is when I was like I can't do Persona 4 Golden, this came to mind, so that would be Mass Effect 2.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, like you were mentioned before, we decidedly never mentioned Mass Effect during the entire other conversation.
It's the same thing we did with Cam, because we don't want to. You don't want to tease it and then come back to it later. It makes sense. It makes because we're gonna devote. We had 2 hours to talk about everything else. Now we're gonna devote some time specifically to Mass Effect. Give it its due as your favorite game, and it's an excellent choice. So how did you? So Mass Effect 2, you had a 360, so you had access to the first Mass Effect, because Mass Effect 2 was my introduction to the series, and as a PlayStation kid. So had you played the first one, and then you like Mass Effect 2 just does everything better, or did you come into Mass Effect 2?
I came in with Mass Effect 2.
Okay.
And it was about the time that Mass Effect 3 was coming out.
Okay.
And I think that probably influenced my decision to like seeing all like the pre-release stuff for Mass Effect 3 and being like, well, this looks really cool. So like I can't jump. Like I could have jumped in at 3, but at the time I went back and looked up reviews for back on the G4TV.com.
Uh-huh.
I looked up the reviews for Mass Effect 1 and being like, wow, this is very outdated. And being like, I don't know if I want to play this. And then seeing Mass Effect 2 and being like, this game looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, just like I remember hearing people like how you mentioned the Indoor Kids. I used to also listen to the Indoor Kids.
Okay.
Which is funny that it never came up in any of our other conversations.
I listened to them for I listened to the Indoor Kids and like a lot of other things on the Nerdist Network for I don't know, like a couple months there, and then Kind of Funny branched off and did their own thing, and that basically became like where all of my podcast time goes to. Mm-hmm. So I haven't listened to Indoor Kids probably like since like that episode or something. Yeah, it's been like a year and a half since I've really listened to any of those shows.
So like they were Mass Effect fans, and I think that also influenced my decision too, because I remember them saying too, like I specifically remember them saying, oh, well, we didn't play 1, but we jumped in at 2, but you get like when you buy 2, you get like a comic book that lets you like pick your decisions for Mass Effect 1 and explain the story. So I was like, all right, cool. So I got 2. I jumped in at 2, but unlike if you just buy the 360 version of 2, you don't get that like comic book. That's like DLC.
That was a PS3 thing, or DLC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you can get it from the Xbox Live Store, but that's like it's like you have to like pay for that.
Mm.
So at the time, I was like, "Fuck, well, I'm just gonna play this game." So for a while there, I definitely had no idea what the fuck was going on, and like
I love how parallel our stories are, because I got it on the PS3. And I did get the comic, but this was before my PS3 was like connected to the internet, at which it needed to be to like download that DLC for the comic. So I was in the same boat. It was like, oh, like I knew I should have had that option, but I didn't. So okay, I guess I'm just gonna be stuck with whatever choices it made.
Yeah, I had the same thing where I remember playing it, being like, it just starting and being like, all right, well, it didn't give me the comic, but whatever. Like, we'll just play this. It seems cool. And I also forgot the part 2 where I downloaded the demo for Mass Effect 2. And it basically, it lets you play, I forget the first mission it lets you play, and then it lets you play the mission where you like break Jack out of the prison.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the demo. And I remember at the time being like, well, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And so then that's when I got into 2. And I also remember specifically being really confused why, because that Jack mission is like halfway through the game. Like that Jack mission is, or like it's not, maybe not halfway, but it's farther into the game. It's not one of the first. It's not the first mission of the game.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I remember going through and playing it, and then just like at the time not knowing a lot, but just being so like immersed in the world, because like there's such a world, and now like the characters you get to like meet on the ship as you're going through, as you build your like Suicide Squad, and like and you picking up all like the codexes like off the ground and like reading about stuff, and it's like, and then you do their loyalty missions, and it's just, I don't know if we want to get too like far ahead all at once, but
I mean this is the Mass Effect 2 portion of the show, so yeah, we can talk about it kind of in whichever sense you want. So like, do you want to jump on any one of those kind of things. For like you mentioned the Codex, which is an interesting one that I want to ask about, because I definitely got nerdy and like would go through and read like all of the like the lore stuff, especially because I was coming in blind like you were. So yeah, I was like I would eat up that stuff to see if there was like if I could get a better understanding of what like had gone on in the previous game. But I know that like many people like those they just like they never open up those Codex things. So what was your experience with that?
Well, it was basically the same as yours because every time you open the pause menu or whatever, it's like Codex and it says like new.
Yeah.
And so kind of the OCD thing a lot of people do is like clear it. But I was like, I would go through and literally just read the Codex. And I specifically remember like I was just there reading a fictional book. And then like I would just look up and like, it's been 45 minutes. And I'm just reading a fictional book on like the Krogans. And I'm just like, and they're like history. And I think that definitely I do think helped me fill in the information about the world and like any info I needed. And because I did the same thing, kind of like with, I don't usually look up stuff about games that often or like while I'm playing them. So like I jumped into Mass Effect 2. I didn't go Google like, all right, what are the Krogans? Or like, what was the story of Mass Effect 1? Like I just kind of played it. And so the Codex, I think, definitely helped me get through my way as well as just kind of picking up things as you go through the story. Because like by the time I'll get to that when we get to the end.
Okay. So yeah, that's Codex is interesting. So yeah, I mean, coming in blind. Were you male shep or fem shep?
I just use the straight up default shepherd. Like
you just use the straight. Yeah, that's I think I probably did too. Like the first time around, because I'm always horrible with like character creative. If anything, like I'll just be like, okay, I'm just gonna change the hair and make it like bigger and poofier. Yeah, so it's a little bit more like me.
See, that's what I did in Fallout. Like Fallout has all those options, and I just like gave him a beard, and I was like, done.
Yep, perfect, excellent, nailed it. So you weren't too worried about like the character customization. What did you think? I mean, did like the opening of the game have any kind of impact on you, where you die and it's like, like you realize after the fact, this is how they're going to like erase all of the progress of the character from the first game. But it's like this. I don't have 40 hours with this character behind me, so like this isn't as devastating as I think it is to people who had played the original. How did you kind of approach that opening sequence?
It was basically like kind of like what you were saying. Is just like it was like that happened.
Yep.
And it's just like the laser beam is like tearing through it. And I remember being like, this is cool, and the graphics on this are really awesome, and like you're floating through space and like pieces are like flying by. And I'm just like, yeah, this is really cool. And then you have that conversation with who I didn't know at the time, but like Ashley, and she's like, oh, like I want to go with you, and he like pushes her into the escape pod, like kind of like classic sci-fi style, and like hits eject, and she like flies away, and then he dies. But I wasn't like devastated. I was just like, all that happened.
Yeah, and then it goes into like the rebuilding him from scratch, and I was like, yeah, that was like, and that. Even that, like, that's a cool sequence, and like I'm getting flashes of like the video of like the cells and stuff and the blood being like reprocessed and rebuilt. But yeah, it was like, yeah, it was the same kind of thing where I was like, I don't know who this Ashley person is, or Liara or Joker. Like I had no like previous like affinity for any of them, so I'm like, okay, they were just like nameless crew members to me until like you learn about them through the future of the game, where it's like, oh, okay, so this is a person who was in your crew from the last game out. I guess that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, and kind of like when they unveil the like Normandy SR2. And they're like Joker's there, and they're like talking to him in like the cutscene, and he's like, "Oh my god!" And he's like, "Joker, they got you?" And he's like, "Yeah, they needed a pilot for the Normandy, so like, of course they got me." And I'm like, "I guess this guy's from the other game."
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, Seth Green, you're along for the ride. That's cool. I'm a Robot Chicken fan. Hooray!" Yeah, it was, and like there would be, you would have like prompts in like conversations where it was like, ask about former crew members, and I'd be like, okay, sure, because I don't know who any of these people were, so tell me a little bit about them. It's like when like, so yeah, the beginning of that game when like you get Garrus, like I had no like connection to Garrus at all. So it was like it, whereas like now that I've gone through, because I played through that game and then I went and bought like the first one on PC, and so I went through, so I had like a sense of what happened in the first game, and then eventually when like all three of them were on PlayStation, I went through and like did a Paragon run, I did a Renegade run of all three games, because those are really all great games. It was definitely like I had a much better appreciation. Whereas now I look back and that first time I played through it and I'm like, oh, this sniper guy is like a friend. Neat. Okay, cool. And his face is blown up. Okay. I mean, he looks kind of like a freak anyway. So is this different? Is his face blown up or does he just look like that? Oh, he is a little bit blown up. Okay, sure.
Yeah, I had that like I had that thing with Garrus where like I didn't have the previous attachment to Garrus, but I would like that whole mission with him where he's there like we're looking for Archangel.
Yeah.
I was like this guy's fucking dope.
Oh man, yeah,
I like this guy.
He's still immediately a badass, but like you don't have the history of his badassery from the previous game.
I didn't do that thing where I was like, oh, he like takes off the helmet and you're like, I wasn't like, oh, it's Garrus, but I was like, this guy's fucking dope.
It was one of those. It was one of those things where I was like, okay, like the way this has been shot cinematically, I get that this is like an important reveal, and I can deduce that this is a guy that I apparently knew. So yeah, but like yeah, I wasn't like I didn't connect the dots in that initial playthrough when I'm talking to the elusive man and like, tell me about Garrus, what's he up to? And he's like, oh, we don't know, he fell off the radar, and then like Archangel is Garrus. It was like, oh, okay, now it makes sense that you were talking about him and this guy, and they're the same guy. But yeah, it was like, yeah, a lot of that stuff gets lost on you the first time you're playing it. If like this is your first introduction to Mass Effect. Did you ever? So before we dive in further, did you ever go back and play the first game?
Yeah, I did. Okay. It was after I beat 3. A little bit later, then I went back to 1, and it was kind of interesting too because instead of being like, I basically all the decisions that are made for you in Mass Effect 2, I basically just picked the opposite decisions. I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting like way to play it, where I'm like, well, I guess technically I did it this way once, so since I'm playing it, I'll do it this way.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of the biggest things that sucks about the default choices in 2, I think, is that Rex doesn't survive. And so you don't like, you never get him as as the cool badass character that he is throughout the rest of the games if you just stick with that. So yeah, that was definitely one of the things I was excited to get in like my full canon playthroughs. I was like, even when I'm playing like Renegade and like the Renegade decision might be like to kill off Rex, I was like, no, fuck that, I'm not doing that. Like Rex is gonna stick around. I'm just gonna be a piece of shit everywhere else.
So I usually do the thing where I always play Paragon. Mm-hmm. And that's just I'm usually the good guy in games, and so I know the point of Mass Effect 2 is also to be like, oh, we'll do the Renegade playthrough, and I've always just like I continue just to pick the Paragon options. Mm-hmm. And my thing too, but I'm like how you're saying like, oh, I'm the bad guy, but then like when it comes to saving Rex, like I'll be the good guy. I'm the good guy until it comes to some shit like that. Not necessarily killing Rex, but there's some just like in the end of Mass Effect 3 when I forget whatever the fucking assassin's name is, he like comes up behind you and you have the Renegade break to like kill him. Mm-hmm. I'm a good guy, but when shit needs to get done, I'm gonna kill this guy.
Well, that's one of the those kinds of prompts, the little like R2 L2 like Renegade or Paragon triggers. I didn't realize that those were like the first time I'm playing it, I was just doing all of them, so I didn't realize that like I was upping my Renegade score when I would like shoot down a canister and drop it on somebody's head or something like that. But I would still do all of them because I was like, that's a cool scene. I didn't want to miss out on that scene happening. So yeah, but that would kind of be like the exception to the rule, where I would be like, okay, for this session, I'm going to play everything through Paragon, but I'm going to still do all those Renegade prompts because those are fun little extra bits of scenes that I get that, you can do it the other way and see how it plays out without you intervening. But yeah, I was like, no, I'd rather like, yeah, fuck that guy up because he was a dick.
No, yeah, I definitely did that. I definitely remember too. There's like the part where like you're yelling at these like soldiers or whatever back and forth, and they're on the platform, and then that's like what you're saying. You can like shoot the barrel and it'll fall. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna fight these fucking guys anyways. Like, I know this is gonna end up in a fight. I might as well have the advantage.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was like, Renegade. Yeah, and then also the thing too. I remember when you're doing what's his faces? I forget the you know, like the green lizard guy, the guy that Thane. Yeah. He, when you're doing his loyalty mission and you do the good cop bad cop thing, I was like, of course I'll be good cop. I'm Paragon. And then the thing is like this, they're like, oh, the police are coming back. Like, we need to do this. So you hit the renegade break, and I like slam my arm down on his throat, and I'm just like, give me the answers I want now. And he's like, I thought you were the good cop. And I'm just like.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I was like, oh, oops, I guess, yep, we're improvising, Thane. Just go with it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like I need to get this done. I'm just like, yeah, like, I don't know. I love that. Yeah, but when I got introduced to the breaks or like the R2 trigger things, is like I was talking to the journalist on the Citadel, and she asked me a question, and one of the renegade breaks popped up, and I thought it was like a quick time event. So I remember I'm sitting back and I have the controller. I'm like, oh, and I like hit RT and I just punch her in the face, and I was like. What did I just do? I know. I was like, "What the fuck did I just do?"
I did the same thing. And then like when you find out, like, or when you go back and play the first game, you realize that could have been your interaction with her. So you can like, if you do the full Renegade run through all 3 games, it's like you just punch her every game. And she like even in I think I don't remember if it's in the second one. Or the third one, but like in one of them, if you punched her before, she ducks, and she knows it's coming at this point.
Yeah, I think that's the third one.
Yeah, I think so as well. And but you still get her, you still clock her. So yeah, that was like screw that lady and her trying to always make you look bad.
Yeah.
So then you actually become real bad and punch her in the face.
Yeah, I just like the other thing I love too, like I love the loyalty missions and how each character has basically their own mission that's just like their story and like that tells you about them, and then they'll help you out. And like Jack, you go back to like where she was orphaned and where she got her like biotic powers, where they were like experimenting on kids.
Yeah.
And like Miranda, you go help her sister, who's like I kind of forget what that one's about, but it's like you're looking for her sister who and you're trying to avoid her from being found by the dad. That's like, because they're both in hiding.
Like they're both clones, so they're sisters in that like that weird sense. And yeah, I mean, yeah, like that's the gist of it, that you're just trying to save her from the dad that like cloned her. And yeah, Miranda appreciate like you. I mean, you have to go to Ilium, and like you talk to somebody there and they take you off to the I loved all of those stories, like because they were very like self-contained, and each one kind of, I mean, some of them were like a little tropey and cliche, but like sci-fi cliche kind of stuff, like the orphaned kid who got superpowers kind of thing. Like I feel like I've seen that story in other media as well, but it was still fun to kind of get to play it out the way you wanted to play it out to a degree. So yeah, like I definitely appreciated all of those loyalty missions as well.
I think I also oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Did you do all of them the first time through and succeed in doing them?
I did all of them, and I succeeded in all of them except for Samara's. You have to do a particular way to get it, and so I think I failed that one. And then Jack's I got, but when her and Miranda are fighting, and you side with Miranda, you lose hers. And you need to be at like 100% Paragon to get her back.
Yeah, I ran into that. That was my problem my first playthrough. So she was like the one that did not survive the suicide mission. And I was like, what? No. And like, where could I have gone? Like, where could I fix this? And then I found out that exact same thing. I was like, well, fuck. All right, playing all over again. And now I'm doing everything Paragon. Because yeah, I mean, that first playthrough was, it wasn't about like going full Paragon or going full Renegade. It was like, okay, I'm gonna like make a decision in the moment, not realizing that I was in something like that. I was kind of being like penalized if I wasn't doing full Paragon or full Renegade. So that like that was like the first one of those kinds of games that like introduced that style to me. So I was like, okay, well, now I know to just do an all or nothing, like be the complete good guy or be the complete bad guy, because being like in the middle ground in these kinds of games sometimes like screws you over like that.
Yeah, see, like I wasn't in the middle ground, but I usually was like picking all the good guy things most of the time.
Yeah.
But it definitely became the thing of like I would pick whatever dialogue I wanted, and then when I found out later was like the top dialogue is good and like the bottom dialogue is bad. So it's like pick everything you can good to get to 100%, so that then you're able to get all these extra options and like play the game differently.
Yeah, exactly. The same for me. It was like I had like hers was the only Paragon check that I didn't pass to try and get like her back on my side. And so it was like, well, I don't have, there's nothing else I can do to raise my Paragon level at this point in the game. So I guess screw it. She's going to die for this game. And I'm going to, when I play through in New Game Plus and do a harder version of it or something, I will know better. So yeah, I mean, that like, I appreciated that definitely, like the replayability of that game and getting to maybe try and do other things or like experiment with like other characters that maybe I hadn't played with so much in my first playthrough. Who was your kind of go-to team? Do you remember?
Yeah, usually I always brought Garrus with me no matter what. And then usually if we were going to be doing a lot of fighting, I would bring Grunt because he's like a super tanky like kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And then I would bring Miranda. Mm-hmm. Because like Garrus and Miranda are like my favorite characters, so I would usually just bring them with me.
Yeah, I think I was the same way. Like I remember being so excited because I'm a huge fan of Chuck, and so between Fallout New Vegas and Mass Effect 2, I just loved that for like that 3 months or whatever. I had Zach Levy going along as one of my companions in one game, and then I had Yvonne Strahovski as Miranda in this one. I was like, yay, like everybody from Chuck is just making my day in all of these games. This is awesome. So yeah, I definitely had that. And yeah, I think I imagine I was probably the same way, because like Miranda was definitely who I like romanced the first time out, and Garrus was just like badass sniper. So yeah, exactly. I want him around.
Yeah, like Garrus is just like, so he's just like badass, and he's like, I'm like, and like even in the story of the thing, he's like your best friend. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, and then Miranda was also my romance thing too. And I was like and then even in 3, I didn't romance anyone else, and you have that option where you talk to Miranda, and she's like, are we still like a thing? And I was like, fuck yeah, we are. And then she died, and I was very sad. I need to do Mass Effect 3 again. I only played through it once, and I've always been wanting to go back and do it, especially more and more recently. Like, I want them to just do the fucking collection on PS4 of the 3 of them with all the DLC. Mm-hmm. And, like, that's just what I want so bad. And they keep toying with us where they're like, we're not doing any, like, remasters. And then they're like, well, if you want them, and then they're like, no, we're not doing it.
Yeah. I mean, the first one, I think, especially, would be the hardest one for them to actually remaster, because, like it, I mean, you said it earlier, like that is so outdated, and it was so outdated just even by the time like 3 was coming out, that it would be really hard to leave it kind of as it was, and not bring it up to the same kind of level as 2 and 3 were. But at the same time, that like drastically changes that first game. So it would, like, that's where I think the biggest hang up probably is from a technical standpoint for them, is like, how do we do that? Do we just do it and people just by and large probably skip over the first game and dive right into 2, or do they try and actually do a proper remaster of the first game and go from there? So yeah. One of the things I loved that we kind of touched on a little bit, but another reason I love the loyalty missions is because they forced me to play with a character that I maybe hadn't played, and so it gave me the opportunity to get their story that I otherwise might have been like, oh yeah, I don't really use Morden all that much, so I don't really need to do anything with him. But getting to do his loyalty mission and stuff, it was like, oh, this is fun. I like this character. I'm still not necessarily going to use him in my party, but I love having that banter and that history with him, and him singing his little Gilbert and Sullivan stuff on the ship. It's definitely one of like the humor in that game, in those like small character driven ways, is like BioWare does that better than I think almost anybody else out there. Between the Mass Effect games and like the Dragon Age games, I love party conversations versus like compared to what I've experienced so far with like Final Fantasy 15, where I'm like, oh god, like these characters it's just so wooden between all of them. I don't feel like they're best friends, or that they're like that they are like the bros or whatever. Like I wish BioWare kind of like put their touch on that, if that's what Final Fantasy is looking to do there.
So yeah, I think like I definitely but basically how we talked about Persona 4 Gold, and the things I brought up were like, oh, it's like the story and the characters. So I guess like even more so than I really realized until I was thinking about this stuff, is like in games, like my favorite games, it's about like they have good stories and they have characters that like I adore.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's something that's even more important to me than I realized. But that's like, even when we're talking about, it's like I love these characters in the Mass Effect world so much, and like Garrus, like you just have such an attachment to, and especially too, like I also just love the story in general of like they basically like Shepard's like revived and he has to work for these people that like he doesn't really want to, but then they like give him the packet and they're like, this is your squad to like get together, like you have to go find these people and put them together, and you have this like ragtag group, and then you finally like you go through that mass relay that no one's ever been through before, and you end up on the other side, and you're like, and there's just like trash and debris everywhere, and then like, so like how you asked me too if I did the loyalty missions, like I did every side mission in the entire game before I did that final mission.
Yeah.
And I also had all the ship upgrades just because I didn't know what I was upgrading, but it was like, oh, this will add cannons to the front of the ship, and I was like, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and so because what's interesting too is that final mission has so many ways for every character to die. There's like legitimate flow charts of like how characters die, and it's like if you don't upgrade the cannons, you can't shoot this debris out of the way. So the ship will get hit, and like a pole will go through Jack, and it's just does different stuff like that. And I'm like, man, this is so. I'm like, that's so cool. That whole final mission's kind of like amazing. Of like you're breaking up into different groups, and you have to like bring certain people with you certain places. And you have to like, you're the leader, and you have to like delegate, like you're like, all right, who has to go back to the ship? Like who has to bring these crew members back to the ship? And like who has to go through the vents and like hack things? And like what biotic person do we use to keep these shields up? And so that's why like the first time I did the final mission, everyone survived except for I think Samara died, I think.
Okay.
Or Samara or Jack. One of them, I think it was Samara, using their biotics died. And then because they died, Garrus died. And I was like, and that's when that little thing I touched on earlier, where I was like, oh, we'll talk about it later. That's when I was like, when Garrus died and I beat that game, I was like kind of sitting there and I was like, well, time to start over. And I'm like, and I'm like, we're playing the entire game over again. And that's when I think I played it like right, and I got like my thing. I was 100% Paragon. Everyone lived. Like, I did all that kind of stuff. But yeah, like the ending of that is so cool.
Yeah, it was the same for me because like the very first time I played it through, I didn't have Jack's loyalty on me anymore, and I picked like the wrong person to lead the other squad because like there's like they do that there's that like fight between like Miranda and Jacob or whatever, and like to get it to pass, it's like you pick Jacob or you pick Garrus or something like that. And I was like, well, Miranda's like been she's been there through with me through thick and thin on this, so like I have faith in her. I think she can do it, not knowing that like she's not one of the actual like pass, like she doesn't get the pass check on that if you pick her. So like yeah, I think I lost like Jacob and I think I lost Jack in my first playthrough, and I was like, well, that sucks because I liked those people. I mean, they weren't my favorites of this group, but like I didn't want anybody to die. So yeah, I did the same thing where I immediately like dove back into the game and was like, okay, well, now I'm gonna go online and figure out how to not fuck that up. I think I did it like the first time. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna replay the final mission, and so I was able to save Jacob in that case. But because that was where like we touched on earlier, I didn't have anything I could do to save Jack at that point. So I was like, well, all right, now I know what to do next time. Yeah, and I mean I don't begrudge that because it's still a great fun game to play, and I had a great time doing it again. And I think I probably did like that immediate playthrough. I was like, and I'm gonna have more fun and just be like Renegade this time out. They're making a third one. I know they're making a third one. So when that third game comes out, I'll want to revisit this anyway, and I'll have like my canon Paragon playthrough there, and I'll have this canon Renegade playthrough that I can kind of carry it forward.
And I also love the part in the final mission too, where like you like in the classic movie fashion, you have that like when the ship is like parked or crashed or whatever, and they're all in like the conference room, and like you give that speech to like everyone of like how you're gonna go out there and like rescue and save the world, and like you have to pick the like dialogue options, and then you also have that same moment too, like after I think it was like when you do break off into two groups, and the ones have to like stay back and like make sure they don't break through the door, and like you have to go fight the like human Reaper thing, and you give that speech too, and I'm just like, oh, so fucking cool.
Yeah, it was. And then the very cinematic game.
And then like the moment at the end too, where like you're like the platforms are falling, you run up the platform and jump into the ship, and you like grab hands, and it's just like, oh, so fucking good.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a like all like the suicide mission is like I think probably what makes that game like the masterpiece that it is, and that it stands the test of time as, because it is like everything has culminated to this. All of those things that you did are affecting like what happens in this sequence of this game in ways that that I think people ended up getting disappointed in come Mass Effect 3, because it feels like the bigger choices in that game don't really play into the end game as much. Whereas this one, it was like, this is a self-contained story. Everything you're doing in here has greater repercussions in the universe that we're telling as well, but they all tie directly to how your suicide mission is going to play out. It was one of those, I always wanted to like see how to go about doing it and making everybody die, and so that you get that ending that like only Joker survives the suicide mission that you can't do anything with. But it was like, that's interesting that they allow that, and it's not a game over. I mean, it's kind of a game over, but like it gives you an ending for it instead of just a game over screen, and you have to then try it again.
Well, did you know about the other like game over ending where you can't even finish the game if you because you can get rid of Samara and pick her, like, you remember the other like
her daughter or whatever. Yeah,
and then if you sleep with the daughter, you'll get like space like STD and you'll die.
I mean, you die. You get like the immediate game over if you romance her, because she's just so like powerful.
Yeah.
I like. Now I'm trying. Oh yeah, no, it is like immediate game over. I was trying to think, like, I think in like the dialogue options, you're like, no, I'm Shepard. I can of course take this or whatever. Yeah. And so like, she's like, okay, well then we'll do it. And you die, you get the game over, and it's like, oh well, I guess you can't. You're like being Shepard. Yeah, you can't like overpower this like weird magic Asari power that they have with their like Black Widow-ness. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that.
I just think it's so funny that like there's multiple ways to just like get a game over without like having successful endings.
Yeah, and like a game over not caused by combat, but because of your choices. yeah, it's, I mean, that's like one of the rare instances of that in gaming. Like, I mean, like one of the other ones I can think of is like Arkham City, where like when you're playing the Catwoman sequence, if you go like and just leave, it's like,
I
okay.
did that the first time.
Yeah, I did it too
think
because I had heard about the Easter egg of it, so I was like, I want to see it. Sure.
literally had no idea about the Easter egg, but I think I was kind of like in the mindset of like, well, what would Catwoman do? And I was like, well, Catwoman would just leave with the money.
Yeah.
So I just walk out and leave with the money, and it does the whole thing where it goes through the credits, and then it like rewinds and puts you back, and it's like, all right, well, you fucked up, so now go play the rest of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Any other things? Any other points you want to bring up on Mass Effect 2?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a solid entry, and I think I'm with you. I think it's the best of the series as like a standalone. I probably like, given I played through 1 and 2, I probably like 3 more, just because it's like closure on all those characters, and it was like the last time I got to spend with all those characters. Especially the Citadel DLC like stands out there as like probably my favorite piece of DLC content ever, because of like all the stuff you just get to do with, like, it's just a love letter to people who put in hundreds of hours with all those games. And I adore it, but I think 2 has fewer problems than 3 does as a whole. So I think from like a strictly game like standalone experience, I think it's probably the best of the choices. So good call on making it your favorite game, in figure quotes.
I love was the Citadel DLC in 3 when you could go and have the shooting contest with Garrus on like the Citadel?
No, I think that's just it. That's just in the game. That's
Yeah.
like his. It's like one of his like last little scenes.
Because I fucking love that. It's like you go and you have that shooting contest with him, and you can let him win, or you can just like beat him. And it's just like, and then that's the other thing with the ending of 3 too that I remember is like before you go into the like final mission where you run down the thing with like all the people, is that you can just sit there and like video call everyone.
Yeah.
And like I literally just went through every option and had like I spent like half an hour just having conversations with people, and you're basically like saying goodbyes or like asking them how they're doing, and it's just like, oh.
Yeah, that was, I mean, like, for all the shit that game gets, like, it's still a great ending to the series, even in spite of its flaws. So great. Mass Effect 2, solid entry into the Trove Talk Hall of Fame of greatest video games ever. So